Well, we're awaiting the president's official announcement of his new national security team. The president will nominate former Senator Chuck Hagel as his next defense secretary and counterterrorism advisor John Brennan to lead the Central Intelligence Agency. Both choices could face a fight in the Senate. We'll see. That's what some say. They have to be confirmed there first before they officially get the title. Peter Brooks is a senior fellow for national security affairs at the Heritage Foundation, back with us. Also a former CIA officer. Mark Dubowitz, executive director of the Foundation for Defensive Democracies, and Major General Bob Scales, a Fox News military analyst. Nice to have you all with us. The panel disappears. Thanks, all of a sudden. There we are. Football games and championship game. Okay, I'm going to use this analogy because the president here is like the head coach of a football team, and he's putting together his coaching staff, if you will. They're not the guys that are going to be on the field. They're not going to be like the CIA agents or the military guy that's putting the operations into movement, General Scales. But this is the team that's going to, make the calls. General Scales, what stands out most to you about what this team looks like in the year ahead?
A couple of things, Jenna. First of all, they're both very, very close to the president, and they're clearly personal choices, intimate choices, if you will. Secondly, in many ways, they're sort of juxtaposed in their policies. Senator Hagel is a gentleman who has been pretty much reluctant to face off against Iran, and on the other hand, Brennan has been a guy who's been perhaps more tactically and operationally aggressive in the world as of late. In my opinion, they're the president's choice, and I think, all things considered, they're pretty good ones.
Peter, you have experience in the CIA. Were you there when John Brennan was also there? What do you think about him returning to the agency potentially?
Well, as the general said, these are the president's choices. The Senate has the right to ask important questions of both these individuals. I think what you're looking at here in terms of national security is more of the same. If you like President Obama's foreign policy over the last 4 years, I think you'll be comfortable with these individuals, because I think that they are of kindred spirits to the president in terms of his views of foreign policy and national security. But once again, it's not my call, it's the Senate's call. There are important questions for both nominees. Whether you're talking about strategy, is he read the entire world? Remember, he's a regionalist, he's a Middle East expert, a counterterrorism expert. But what about China and the president's Pacific pivot? What about North Korea?
Well, what do you think about that,
so
Peter?
There's questions there.
You worked in the CIA. I mean, have you worked with him before? Do you have real concerns?
No, I've
about
not worked with John Brennan. No, I don't know John Brennan, Jenna, so I can't say that. But obviously, an individual that has worked in the White House, I mean, this is somebody who is capable. The question is, are you supportive of their approach to these issues? That's the important thing here. Once again, like I said, the train has left the station on the president's foreign policy and national security. For Chuck Hagel, I mean, what are his views in terms of defense cuts in the future? What are his views on Iran and our relationship with Israel? There's a lot of very important questions that these senators, who are the ones who are going to be able to ask those questions, are going to ask to these nominees.
Mark, you often brief lawmakers of both parties about a variety of different international policy issues. What do you think are some of the top questions that need to be asked of both these individuals?
Well, I actually do think it's about Iran. After the dream team of Hillary, Panetta, and Petraeus, I think the Senate's going to have to vigorously scrutinize the records of all three of these gentlemen. I do think, actually, when it comes to Senator Hagel, his record on Iran has been puzzling for many senators. He has refused to designate the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as a global terrorist entity. He's voted against the two central pillars of economic sanctions that the Obama administration is now using to put pressure on Iran. And I think that the Senate's going to be asking some tough questions about why he refused to sign a letter to the European Union calling for the designation of Hezbollah as a terrorist organization, when actually John Brennan has spent the past 2 years relentlessly trying to convince the EU to designate Hezbollah as a global terrorist organization. So these are going to be some interesting hearings, and I think the Senate's going to ask some pretty tough questions.
And to generalize that is interesting, because it's about being able to name who our enemies are in a very broad context. That's what we're talking about. General Scales, it's interesting if you take a look at Senator Hagel and Senator Kerry. Both vets themselves. Both have been critical at times in the military, but also supporters of the military as well. How do you view having these two vets in these high positions potentially? What would that mean?
That's a great question. First of all, I tend to support the person over the policy. Secondly, I testified before Senator Hagel's committee in 2007 over the surge, and I talked with him at length after my testimony. And I'll tell you this, one thing that struck me about him is enormous empathy for the American soldier. And as the military draws down, he's going to be a person, I think, who maintains the trust and the compact that the government has with our returning veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. So here's a guy who's seen war, who understands the nature and character of war, who, because of his own combat experience in Vietnam, is going to be reluctant to support going to war again. And here's a person who will be very supportive of our veterans as they return from war, Jenna.
Interesting to read Congressman Conan, a new congressman from Arkansas, be so critical of Senator Hagel. He also an Iraq and Afghanistan veteran. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Quick final question for all of you. Peter, starting with you. Are we safer with these men at the top here, as the top executives of their department? Will they make us safer?
They're going to do the best job they can, and they will be well-intentioned, but where I differ with the general is that it's policy. These are high-quality people, but it's the administration's policies that have me concerned, and we've talked about that many times, and once again, I think you're going to see more of the same.
Mark, quickly?
Well, the foremost challenge we have is from Iran. That represents the most significant threat to our national security. So what's really important is not what I think or what we all think about these people, but what Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, thinks about these choices. And I'm not sure that Ali Khamenei today believes that with these choices, America is prepared to do everything possible to stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons. That's the important symbolism of these choices.
General Scales?
Well, these are the president's men. They're his choices. He was reelected. I do believe and agree with Peter that it's going to be business as usual for the next 4 years. But accepting that, I do believe that both of these men are reasonably well qualified for the job and will carry the president's policy forward. It's the president's policy, but not their policy, Jenna.
That's one of the big questions of 2013. Are we safe? Will we be safer in the years ahead? Where is the country going? Big questions for these gentlemen as well. We'll await the president's announcement a little after 1 o'clock. Thank you to you all for your thoughts today.
Thank you, Jenna.
Thanks, Jenna.